Chapter 800. Miss Shuang. She saw that the servant was so protective of her mistress. If she did not help her, she might really be destroyed by the vicious woman, Pang Yuan. However, her mistress did not ask her to stop her, so she was a little uncertain. It was true that the young miss abhorred evil, but she would never look on coldly from the sidelines towards those who had helped her. She had just met this servant from the North Sea and felt that she was not a bad person. She did not look like the other women in the palace. Shen Yueji glanced at the little servant and smiled. An imperial concubine of a country, for her own selfish desire, allied with the dark poison cult and wanted to kill me. Not only that, but you also wanted to kill the emperor's close friend and trusted bodyguard. I don't know what will happen to imperial concubine Pang's reputation if this was spread out. Sure enough, as soon as Shen Yueji said this, Pang Yuan's face turned pale. She stared at her fiercely. Shen Yueji, what do you mean? Are you threatening me? Threatening? Shen Yueji sneered. It's not a threat. I just want to remind imperial concubine Pang. Because of punishing a servant girl, he ruined his own reputation. Although I have never seen Grand Tutor Pang, I have heard of his name. Presumably, what he disdains the most is associating with the evil and crooked sects of Jianghu. In addition, imperial concubine Pang is his only daughter. She is the pearl in his palm since she was young. If he knew that his daughter, whom he had high hopes for, had colluded with the dark poison cult to kill me and even the white-haired granny, Ji Chuhong and Fui, I don't know how imperial tutor Pang would feel when he finds out. Shen Yueji. Pang Yuan was completely angry this time. Rather than being angry, it would be better to say that she was afraid. Her father did not know about this. He had been an official for so many years, and he had always been righteous. He could not stand those who played tricks behind his back. If her father knew that she had colluded with the dark poison cult, she did not dare to think about the consequences. Although her father loved her, she could not touch the bottom line. If her father, because of Shen Yueji's words, she looked at Shen Yueji with no more confidence. Shen Yueji, what do you want? Hearing this, Shen Yueji smiled slightly. What do I want? I should be the one asking Imperial Consort Pang this question. What do you want? You are the Feng country's emperor's imperial concubine Shen. You are doted on by everyone. Don't think that I don't know you. Since the Feng nation's emperor dotes on you so much, why did you seduce my brother emperor? Shen Yueji, tell me, what are you plotting? What is your purpose in coming to the northern underworld? Are you planning to do something to Beiming? Imperial Consort Pang, you've really misunderstood me. I'm just a woman. My parents are still in the Feng nation. What can I do? As for why I came to the northern underworld, of course it's because I liked the emperor when he was in the Feng nation. I liked him even after I entered the palace. What's wrong with following the man I like to the northern underworld? Mph, do you think I will believe your words? Shen Yueji, you have bad intentions. You want to start a war between the two nations. Since ancient times, the emperor has always been ambitious. If you blame the war between the two nations on a woman, don't you think that your actions and words are too direct? Chapter 801. Pang Yuan was an experienced person, so she naturally understood the meaning behind Shen Yueji's words. However, because of what Shen Yueji had just said, she knew that it was too late to deny it. Even the white-haired granny knew about it, let alone her. She was afraid that Shen Yueji would really tell her father about it. She's just a lowly servant. It's all the same to me whether she lives or dies. Forget it, for your sake, I'll spare this lowly servant's life today. Xiao, Your Highness. Let's go. Your Highness. Xiao looked at her in confusion. Your Highness, are you really going to let this lowly servant go? If it weren't for Shen Yueji and the others' presence, Pang Yuan would have slapped her again. This lowly servant was constantly reminding her and making her lose face. She knew that Shen Yueji had a handle on her, but she didn't dare to do anything to her. But she still dared to say these words in front of her. If this wasn't embarrassing her in public, then what was it? After Xiao words fell, she received a cold look from Pang Yuan. Xiao was startled and quickly shut her mouth. Knowing that she had said the wrong thing, She lowered her head even more. "Mother! Your Highness! This servant deserves to die, humph." Pang Yuan snorted coldly and left with a flick of her sleeve. She had originally come to cause trouble for Shen Yueji, but in the end, she was the one who had a handle on her. If Xiao wanted to do anything to her in the future, she would use it to threaten her. This wasn't a good thing for her. She might even have to look at Shen Yueji's expression when talking to her in the future. The more Pang Yuan thought about it, the angrier she felt. Those good-for-nothings from the dark poison cult couldn't even do such a small thing. It seemed that she had placed too much hope on them. However, whenever she thought of Shen Yueji's smug face, Pang Yuan gnashed her teeth in hatred. "Bitch, don't be too happy too early. One day, I'll make you regret it. I'll expose your ugly face and evil deeds to Brother Emperor. Get up quickly. Since you know that Pang Yuan is vicious, why are you still going against her so openly?" After Pang Yuan left, Shuangxi hurriedly went forward to help her up. He saw that she was covered in blood, but she did not show any signs of pain. She could not help but sigh at this woman's strength. If it was a woman from the Feng nation, she would have cried and kowtowed to admit her guilt. "Is Pang Yuan your enemy?" Not understanding why Shen Yueji would say such a thing, Shuangxi raised his head and looked at her. "Miss?" The woman's blood-stained face finally showed some expression because of Shen Yueji's words. She looked up at Shen Yueji and suddenly smiled. No wonder His Majesty likes Miss Shen so much. Miss Shen really has something worth liking. Even Pang Yuan herself didn't realize how meticulous her observation was. No matter how bold a servant in the palace was, he wouldn't dare to directly confront an imperial concubine. Moreover, based on Pang Yuan's character, she knew that confronting such a vicious woman would only bring her harm and no benefits. Perhaps, she might even lose her life because of this. But she still went against her fearlessly. Even though she knew that Shen Yueji wouldn't be afraid, others would think that she was doing it for Shen Yueji. In fact, only Shen Yueji knew the truth. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow UU literature. Chapter 802. She opened her mouth and smiled, looking pitiful. "My parents died early, and my sister and I depended on each other since we were young. Sometimes, when we didn't have enough to eat, when the weather was cold, and we couldn't wear warm clothes, it was my sister who took care of me. When there was nothing to eat, she cut off her own flesh, cooked it, and told me that it was given to her by a kind-hearted person. My sister loved me very much, and she treated me very well. Later, as I grew up, in order to support me, she told me to enter the palace. We didn't ask for anything when we entered the palace, just to have enough to eat. Even if we were bullied by the old people every day, at least, we would have enough to eat and wear warm clothes. Because my sister was eloquent and nimble, she was sent to Pang Yuan's bedroom to take care of her food, clothing, and transportation. As for me, I was calm when things happened, unlike those people who flattered her, so Eunuch Liu let me stay in Zhengyang Palace to take care of everything. As for my elder sister, I thought that we would finally be able to find a way out of this harem. But I didn't expect that one day, my elder sister accidentally knocked over a jade vessel in front of Pang Yuan. That jade vessel was something she didn't use, but Pang Yuan still ordered her to be beaten to death. It's just an ordinary piece of jade. Speaking of the past, the woman couldn't understand. There were blood stains and tears on her face, and the blood slid down the wound on her face. She only felt that it was ironic. The people of the royal family always treat human lives like grass. What did my sister do wrong? She had only accidentally broken a jade artifact, an ordinary jade artifact that was not even worth mentioning. Why was it that in Pang Yuan's eyes, her sister's life was not even comparable to an ordinary jade artifact? My sister even gave up her life because of this. What's funny is that I entered the palace with my sister, and at that time, when she needed help the most, I didn't know anything. I was the last to know that she died. A lowly servant passing away in the palace was not worth mentioning at all. The woman's voice sounded like she was about to cry. My sister and I grew up together. After we entered the palace, we supported each other. She would give me the delicious food that the palace supervisor gave her, and I would tell her Eunuch Liu's praises of me. You don't know how happy she was. I thought that we could live a carefree life in the palace, but it turns out that I was thinking too much. When she learned of her sister's death, she was angry and full of hatred. She didn't even feel this much when she was with her sister, even when they were poor. But now, when she learned of her sister's death, when she learned that Pang Yuan had ordered her to be beaten to death despite not having done anything wrong, she realized for the first time that this was what hatred was. She hated Pang Yuan. She hated her identity even more. She hated her incompetence. She hated that Pang Yuan was in a high position and had the backing of the Pang family. She was just a lowly servant who couldn't do anything. All she could do was look at her enemy every day, but when she thought of her sister, after her sister's death, she was disheartened. In addition to thinking of her sister, she saw her sister getting snubbed by the emperor every day, and she felt a little proud in her heart. Only when she saw her sister lost her soul, she felt happy in her heart. Although she couldn't take revenge on her, seeing her like this was the only comfort for her. Chapter 803. Shuang Shi understood the meaning behind the maid's words. She had thought that Lin Mengya was being so kind to her mistress just now. However, Lin Mengya sympathized with her after hearing what she had said and what she had experienced. When a person was down and out, she only had one family member, and this family member was her sky and her everything. Lin Mengya guessed that even though she had entered the palace, her sister must still be important to her. Now that she knew her sister's death, it was as if the sky had collapsed in an instant. When a person was not afraid of death, she would not be afraid of Pang Yuan's weight and status in her heart. She was not afraid of death. That was why she dared to look at her. Since Miss Shen knew that I was not being kind to you, why did you still save me from her hands? Everyone in the imperial harem knows that it's better to offend the Empress Dowager than to offend imperial consort Pang. You are from the Foam country, and the emperor likes you very much. I'm afraid Pang Yuan has hated you for a long time. The more you look down on her, the more she wants to get rid of you. It's not a wise move for you to be targeted by such a person. Why? Even if I don't offend her, she will still kill me. Didn't you hear my conversation with her just now? I am from the Foam country, and I came to the northern underworld from thousands of miles away. I have no backer but the emperor. Shouldn't I seize this opportunity? Since I'm going to die sooner or later, why can't I be proud for a while? It's not too late to die after I kill her. The corner of Shuang Shi's mouth twitched when she heard her mistress's words. As long as the son-in-law was here, how could Miss die? And there was also the white-haired granny. Judging from the granny's attitude, she seemed to like Miss very much and was even more reluctant to let anything happen to Miss. As for why I saved you, I was just curious. I saw that you were only a palace maid with no one to rely on in the palace, but you had the courage to oppose Pang Yuan. Therefore, based on your courage, I wanted to save you. Shuang Shi. Miss, take her down and bandage her wound. She's injured. If she doesn't bandage her wound, I'm afraid I won't be able to save her even if I wanted to. Yes, Miss. This servant Wanqing thanks Miss Shen for saving my life. Before leaving, Wen Qing suddenly knelt down in front of her. Shen young lady saved this servant's life. In the future, this servant's life will be Shen young lady's. If Shen young lady needs this servant to do anything, this servant will not hesitate to die 10,000 times and go into the fire. There will not be a single word of complaint. Speaking of which, I've just arrived here and I'm not familiar with anything. I do need a servant girl who is familiar with this place to explain things to me about the North Sea. Shen Yueji nodded. You may leave. Yes. Xi'an Palace. After thinking about it, Pang Yuan felt that she still needed to see the Empress Dowager. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to understand the Empress Dowager's intentions. She tried her best to suppress the anger she received from Shen Yueji. The purpose was that she was afraid that Xi'an would see something at that time. Previously, she had some doubts about Xi'an's attitude towards her. Later, she called her father into the palace without telling him. Although her father didn't know that she was secretly cooperating with the dark poisonous cult, Xi'an must have said a lot of bad things about her. Otherwise, her father wouldn't be so angry. Thinking of this, Pang Yuan couldn't help but get angry. Chapter 804. That damned old woman. She respected her so much since she entered the palace. She didn't have a mother since she was a child and treated the Empress Dowager as her own mother. For her, the Empress Dowager cooked for her and learned embroidery for her. She spent a lot of effort to please her. However, the Empress Dowager hid it from her and protected an outsider. For a bitch from Phone Country, she didn't hesitate to invite the white-haired granny back, imperial concubine. The Empress Dowager is not feeling well today and has gone to bed. Why are you here? The woman's voice caught Pang Yuan off guard. Pang Yuan suddenly came to her senses and looked at Nanny Zhu, who appeared in front of her. She didn't even have time to retract the ferocious expression on her face. She didn't know how much of it Nanny Zhu had seen. Pang Yuan tried to hide her embarrassment with a smile. Nanny Zhu, I haven't seen the Empress Dowager for a day. I want to come and talk to her. By the way, you said the Empress Dowager is not feeling well. Is she sick? Did she see the imperial physician? Is she all right? Nanny Zhu smiled and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Imperial concubine, don't worry. The Empress Dowager has been suffering from the same old illness. She will be fine after a rest. But I'm afraid that you won't be able to see the Empress Dowager this time. If you have anything to say, you can tell me first. When the Empress Dowager wakes up, I will pass the message to the Empress Dowager on behalf of you. Seeing that Nanny Zhu had said this, Pang Yuan didn't have the strength to go in even if she wanted to. She could only force a smile on her face. In that case, thank you, Nanny Zhu. I came here for nothing. I just wanted to see the Empress Dowager. After all, I would come here every day to talk to the Empress Dowager. After saying that, she turned around and left. Imperial concubine. Nanny Zhu stopped her from behind. Pang Yuan turned around and looked at her. Nanny Zhu, what do you want to say to me? All these years, the Empress Dowager has been very kind and tolerant to Imperial Consort. I'm sure Imperial Consort has seen it with your own eyes. Pang Yuan also smiled and said, Nanny Zhu is right. The Empress Dowager has always treated me as her own daughter all these years, and so have I. I didn't have a mother since I was a child, so I treat the Empress Dowager as my own mother. No matter what it is, I will tell the Empress Dowager, and the Empress Dowager loves me as always. Senior servant Zhu suddenly smiled. The Empress Dowager treats Imperial Consort Niang very well. Not to mention other things, just the tolerance and indulgence she has shown over the years is something that we, as servants, can all see. Furthermore, both the Emperor and the Empress Dowager were aware of what Imperial Consort Nyang had done in the inner palace. Moreover, the Empress Dowager has covered up for you countless times. Pang Yuan finally sensed that something was wrong from her words. She looked at her and asked, Nanny Zhu, what exactly do you want to say to me? What this servant wants to say is naturally the intention of the Empress Dowager. This servant just wants to remind Imperial Consort Pang that Shen Yueji is from the Phone Country and has ulterior motives in coming to the Beiming Kingdom. She is the woman that the Emperor has taken a fancy to. Moreover, the Empress Dowager has also recognized her as her future daughter-in-law. What Imperial Consort Nyang did to Miss Shen previously, the Empress Dowager only thinks that Imperial Consort Nyang is young and immature. In addition, you are proud and arrogant, so it is inevitable that you will make some mistakes. Chapter 805. The Empress Dowager is also willing to forgive you. As for now, since Miss Shen has entered the palace safely, the Empress Dowager also hopes that Imperial Consort Zhu can stop having such thoughts and don't do it again in the future. Otherwise, it will make the Emperor unhappy, and even the Empress Dowager can't cover it up for you. The Emperor has always been a very opinionated person. He rarely interfered in the Emperor's affairs, and the Emperor doesn't want the Empress Dowager to interfere. The Empress Dowager is also a certain age, so I hope. Seeing that Pang Yuan's face gradually became ferocious, Nanny Zhu wisely stopped what she was about to say and looked at her quietly. Pang Yuan clenched her fists. Because of anger, her ferocious face was no longer as gentle and beautiful as before. What did the Empress Dowager mean? If she still didn't understand the Empress Dowager's meaning at this time, she would be a fool. The Empress Dowager meant that the Empress Dowager could protect her in the past, but now Shen Yueji was here. If she did something bad to Shen Yueji again, the Empress Dowager would no longer protect her, but Shen Yueji, that bitch? For a moment, it was even more difficult for her to accept it. The white-haired old lady was already hard for her to accept. Although the white-haired old lady was the same as her, when the white-haired old lady protected Shen Yueji, she already thought that it might be the Empress Dowager's idea. Now hearing Nanny Zhu's words, she had no hesitation to think that maybe the Empress Dowager was sitting in Xian Palace now, not resting at all, and not feeling sick. She just didn't want to see her. After all, Nanny Zhu was an experienced person. She could more or less know Pang Yuan's character. She stopped when she was right and didn't say anything more. She didn't intend to say anything else. Pang Yuan was arrogant, but she was not a fool. Because of Nanny Zhu's identity, she was the Empress Dowager's favorite. In addition, she had watched Nanny Zhu grow up. Just because of these two reasons, Pang Yuan knew that she could not vent her anger on Nanny Zhu. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists hard. Nanny Zhu glanced at her and said no more. Your Highness, please go back. I still have to serve the Empress Dowager. Nanny Zhu turned around and went back to the bedroom. Xiao looked at Pang Yuan's face, which was as sinister as a ghost. He wanted to say something, but he didn't dare to. He was deeply afraid that he would say something at this moment and offend her. If that happened, he would definitely suffer a terrible fate. Your Highness, it's windy outside. Why don't we go back to the palace first? Back to the palace? Pang Yuan suddenly smiled. What are we going back for? Is there still a place for me in this palace? Your Highness. The Empress Dowager's words are already very clear. She is siding with that bitch. She really couldn't understand it. Her face was full of hatred. Tell me, what's so good about that bitch? What kind of aphrodisiac did she feed them? Brother Emperor, the white-haired granny, Hong Fui, and Ji Chu, why did they all side with her? What's so good about her? She just wanted to kill that woman. She grabbed Xiao collar and said, Tell me, am I not doing this for Brother Emperor? That woman is from the Feng Kingdom. She is the imperial concubine of the Feng Kingdom's emperor. How can she be the empress of the Dark North Kingdom with her identity? What if she has ulterior motives? If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find bosom friends Tilda. Chapter 806. Empress Dowager, let's not talk about Brother Emperor. Empress Dowager is a smart person. How could she allow such a woman with ulterior motives to stay in the northern underworld and be the empress? What do you think Empress Dowager has been drugged by that woman? Brother Emperor is muddle-headed. Is she also muddle-headed? Mother. Your Highness, this is Xian Palace. If Empress Dowager hears what you said, that was a great disrespect. Xiao reminded her with some fear. After all, Pang Yuan had scruples about Xiao's words. In the end, she glared at her fiercely and turned away angrily. Since Empress Dowager deliberately favored that bitch, one day, she would let her see with her own eyes the price she paid for today's ignorance. She left Xian Palace. Empress Dowager half closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. When she saw Granny Zhu come in, she sat up a little. Empress Dowager can predict everything, but what? Xian smiled. Granny Zhu, you've been with me for so many years. What's there to hesitate about? Just say it. I'm worried that Shen Yueji may not be a match for concubine Pang. In addition, Empress Dowager's favoritism is so obvious. Empress Dowager also knows concubine Pang's thoughts. The more you favor Shen Yueji, the more she will hate Shen Yueji. I'm worried that if concubine Pang plays tricks behind the scenes, Miss Shen will be at a disadvantage. Hearing this, Empress Dowager suddenly smiled. Granny Zhu, do you think an old woman like me can't defeat a little girl? Granny Zhu smiled. Empress Dowager, I don't mean that. Empress Dowager has followed His Majesty into the palace since she was young. Although she has never experienced any serious palace fights and His Majesty has always protected her well, Empress Dowager also knows that if the women in the harem really fight, they will be in deep water. They are no worse than those soldiers who go to war outside. I'm worried that Miss Shun has just come to the northern underworld. Even if she is protected by His Majesty and Empress Dowager, I'm still worried. I don't know when Imperial Consort Nyang has secretly contacted those evil sects in Jianghu behind the Empress Dowager's back. This servant is. I have also thought about what Mother Zhu is worried about, but... Xian paused. If that Shen Yueji didn't know anything and was so easily eliminated by Wn how could she be our Dark North Empress? When I followed the late Emperor, there were many women who wanted to kill me. If your man is too outstanding, you don't have to worry about being targeted by others. Being able to keep your man, that's what's amazing about you. I'm protecting her because Shong'er likes her. Shong'er is my son. I've watched him grow up, but I've never seen him care so much about a woman. Since he likes her, I can persuade myself to accept her. Whether it's Shen Yueji or Pang Yuan, although I'm selfish, I'm partial to Wn as my daughter-in-law. After all, I've watched Wn grow up. Although she's vicious, at least I'm the Empress Dowager of the Northern Underworld. As long as I don't interfere in her affairs, she won't dare to do anything to me. In addition, her father is loyal to the Northern Underworld. I'm more happy than anyone to see them succeed. It's just a pity I want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Regent, get into trouble. Chat about life and find confidants tilde. Chapter 807. Shong didn't like her, and she couldn't do anything about it. As a mother, she could consider for the sake of the people and the country in the North Underworld. But she knew better than anyone else about the relationship between a man and a woman, especially when they were in love. The man gave her everything. Although the country was important, he was protecting others. But it was different when he had someone he liked. He was not protecting others, but his true love, the love of his life. Speaking up to this point, Xian closed his eyes. I only have one son. No matter what I do, I must think of him. As long as he is willing, I will not hesitate to pay any price just to make him happy and happy. Maybe Wn and he are not destined to be together. If he really likes Wn he should have fallen in love with her many years ago, instead of, until now, he could still like someone else because of her. Empress Dowager, Miss Shun has come to the harem of the North Underworld. The white-haired granny seems to like her very much. These days, she has been staying in Zhengyang Palace to protect her secretly. She hasn't even come to your place. This was something that had never happened before. Apart from meeting the emperor, the white-haired old woman spent most of her time in the Empress Dowager's place and chatting with her. This old thing is still the same as before. She has high standards. For so many years, no matter how Wn tried to please her, she didn't like Wn. But Shen Yueji doesn't need to please her at all. She just wants to get close to her. It seems. She smiled. This Shen Yueji indeed had her outstanding points. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made a person with such high standards repeatedly lower his own status to protect her so thoroughly. But Miss Shun. Ordinary women will come to see the Empress Dowager first when they enter the palace. But she doesn't want to come. It seems that if the Empress Dowager doesn't summon her, she won't come to see you. This girl can't figure out my mind, so she is waiting for me to summon her. Believe it or not, as long as I don't summon her, even if Shong really makes her the Empress, she won't come to see me. After hearing the Empress Dowager's words, Nanny Zhu hesitated. Well, Empress Dowager, is Shen Yueji's character good or bad? In the ears of others, it's naturally not good. She's spoiled and arrogant, even looking down on me, the Empress Dowager. However, Ari Jiao happens to be the opposite of what others see. She does not take the initiative to pay her respects to Ari Jiao, which is what makes her outstanding. It means that she will not curry favor with those in power. Unlike those women in the harem who say things against their will to please you. Nanny Zhu understood Empress Dowager's words more or less. She nodded and said, then, Empress Dowager, do you want to take the initiative to summon Miss Shun? Yes. Xian nodded and said, after all, she is my future daughter-in-law. That old woman is ahead of me, so I naturally can't be slower than her. However, now is not the time. You and I only need to observe in secret for a period of time. As for what Sion's observation was referring to, Sion didn't say, and Nanny Zhu didn't dare to ask. She just respectfully bowed her head and said, "Yes, Empress Dowager." Pyongyang Palace. Almost as soon as Pang Yuan came back, the tea table and jewelry in front of her were directly slapped down by her angrily. The crackling sound echoed harshly in the hall. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 808. Even the servants in the palace, seeing her so angry appearance, were scared to kneel on the ground. "Your Highness, please calm down. Your Highness, please calm down." Xiao knelt on the ground in fear. If it was before, she would still dare to go forward to calm her anger. During this time, she found that the anger of Her Highness was getting stronger and stronger, and it was not something that a servant like her could calm down. Moreover, if she didn't manage to calm herself down, the Empress would vent her anger on her. In other people's eyes, she had grown up with Guifei Nyang and had been by her side since she was a child. Not only was she a favorite of Guifei Nyang, even the servants in the palace all respected her, feared her, and were afraid of offending her. In fact, only Xiao herself knew that it was okay if the Highness was not angry, but she was afraid of the Highness in anger. Not to mention that she was a servant who followed her since childhood, even the relatives around her, she could kill because of anger. Hong Fui and the white-haired grandmother were a good example. Anyone who went against her, she would not care what their identity was. Where is it that this Highness did not do well enough? Since this Highness entered the palace, I have been careful. Whether it is the Empress Dowager, Hong Fui, the brothers of the Emperor, or the grandmother, I have always treated them as my relative. Now, one by one, for an outsider, they treat me like this. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. Pang Yuan clenched her fists, and a pair of sharp eyes were scarlet because of anger. Now even a cheap servant beside the Empress Dowager dares to use this tone to talk to this Highness. This Highness was raised by her since childhood. They have not even seen Shen Yueji's face, and they dare to treat me like this. Ah! She shouted angrily, and even the coffee table in front of her was pushed to the ground by her. She saw the servants of the Pyongyang Palace kneeling on the ground and stepped forward to kick them, a group of dogs. What is the use of this Highness to raise you? You are a group of ungrateful people who can't distinguish between good and bad. You all deserve to die, all deserve to die. The slaves of the Pyongyang Palace knelt on the ground and shivered. Even when Pang Yuan beat and scolded them, they did not dare to fight back. Although Pang Yuan was a woman, she was as strong as a man when it came to beating and scolding them. She wanted to vent all her strength on them. Seeing that a servant girl's face was bleeding, Xiao retreated in fear. She was deeply afraid that if her ladyship saw this, she wouldn't know when her ladyship's merciless fist and scissors would land on her. Oh, younger sister was wondering why there was no one outside. Luckily, Ben Gong didn't even need to come in to report. So it turns out that imperial concubine Jejia is here to beat people up to vent her anger. A frivolous and sarcastic voice came from outside. The woman's voice was like the cry of an oriole, but in Pang Yuan's ears, it was very ear-piercing. She abruptly raised her head, and her gaze shifted from the servants to the person who had just entered. She was dressed in a graceful pink gown and silk satin, making her look even more alluring and alluring. Heavy makeup made her whole person full of a seductive aura. Pang Yuan's gaze only fell on her for a moment, and she quickly retracted it. She said sarcastically, "Who is this Highness?" It turns out to be the one from the Charming Palace. Speaking of the name of the Charming Palace, it was the Empress Dowager who gave her the name. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, WeChat, chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 809. This was because Shangguan Mai's beauty aside, her body and appearance were even more seductive than a vixen's. It was hard for a man not to have a reaction to her. In addition, Shangguan Mai's father was a first-grade prime minister. Her position in the court was even more important. Although it was not comparable to the Pang family, She was also a loyal minister who had followed the late emperor for many years. Even the emperor's brother valued the Shangguan family. She was also the only woman in the harem who dared to look down on Pang Yuan. Moreover, he liked to go against her at all times. It could be imagined that when Pang Yuan saw her now, she would not have a good expression on her face. Her ferocious face was even more ugly. Shangguan Mai, how dare you come to the pure young palace of this palace and dare to enter without notifying me? Do you still take this palace as the master of the harem? Shangguan Mai did not show the slightest fear when she heard this. Instead, she covered her lips and smiled. Look at what sister is saying. You are only in charge of the Phoenix Seal. The emperor did not say that you will be the empress. Besides, isn't the empress of the northern underworld already chosen? I'm afraid you won't be able to control the Phoenix Seal for long. Seeing that Pang Yuan's face was getting uglier, Shangguan Mai did not feel afraid because of her anger. She still said to herself, also, when sister came in just now, I already told sister that it is not that sister doesn't know the rules and came to see sister imperial concubine. I don't know how to let someone report. It is really. The servants of the Pure Young Palace have been summoned here by sister to punish them. Even if sister wants Yu'er to report, it is useless. Right, Yu'er? In order to prove what she said, Shangguan Mai looked at the maid beside her. Yu'er was respectful. What the empress said is right, imperial concubine. It's not that my empress doesn't want this slave to report, it's really that you don't have a slave outside the hall of the Pure Young Palace. This slave's empress is worried about whether imperial concubine has an accident, so she rushed in without authorization to see if imperial concubine is safe. Pang Yuan only felt a chill in her heart. She sneered a few times. Even her anger could not be vented. Does sister imperial concubine mean that I should be grateful to you? Thank you for your concern. Shangguan Mai chuckled softly. Younger sister and imperial concubine Jejie entered the palace at about the same time. Speaking of which, I've been in the palace for so many years. I've more or less understood imperial concubine Jejie's character and temperament. There's no need to thank me. Instead, this younger sister has to thank imperial concubine Jiyu for her tolerance and nurturing all these years. Bang! Pang Yuan suddenly slammed the table in front of her. Shangguan Mai paused, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at Pang Yuan with a smile. You don't visit me for no reason. Speak, what is your purpose for coming to see me? Or, she narrowed her eyes dangerously, her tone even sharper than before. Did you hear about what happened last night and purposely came to make fun of me? Elder sister's joke, how dare I look at it? If younger sister really came to see elder sister's joke, you will not come in person and make elder sister angry. Instead, it will be those women in the palace who shut themselves in the room. They can laugh however they want, they can be proud however they want. Indeed, according to Pang Yuan's identity, if those people really wanted to see her as a joke, they would never dare to run in front of her and laugh at her in person. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, talk about life, find a confidant Tilda. Chapter 8-10. Not only them, but even Shangguan Mai herself did not dare to do so. Thinking of this, Pang Yuan's expression became a little better. Why did you come to see me? Why would a younger sister come to see me? I just came to chat with you. Pang Yuan looked at her dangerously and felt disdainful of her pretentious tone. Really? How come this consort doesn't remember when this consort had such a close relationship with you? Elder sister, His Majesty is currently occupied by an outsider. You and I are both His Majesty's women. Although we often quarrel because of His Majesty, there's an old saying that family members will always be family. How can we let an outsider take advantage of the situation and gain His Majesty's favor when we are fighting among ourselves? Although she did not like the slut in front of her. However, Pang Yuan still listened to her words. Do you think that I want to let that slut take advantage of the situation? It's a pity that the emperor dotes on her so much, and even the Empress Dowager, Hong Fui, is on the same side as her. The Empress Dowager has already warned me. If I continue to find trouble with that slut openly, do you think that the Empress Dowager will let it go? Elder sister, You also said that it's naturally impossible to find trouble with that slut openly. But elder sister, why don't you do it behind her back? Behind her back? Thinking of her collaboration with the dark poison cult, she frowned. Wasn't this considered behind her back? The Empress Dowager and the Empress Dowager were both influential figures in the court. No matter how powerful she was, it would be difficult for her to escape their eyes. However, she did not tell this to Shangguan Mai, in case Shangguan Mai got hold of her weakness in the future. Seeing that Pang Yuan did not speak, how could Shangguan Mai, who was smart, not know what Pang Yuan was planning? She smiled and took the initiative to step forward. She held Pang Yuan's hand and helped her sit on the chaise lounge. Then she personally bent down to pour a cup of tea for her and respectfully handed it to her. Younger sister, tell me the truth. Don't be angry. Speak. Everything about big sister is good, whether it's beauty, background, or talent. In this harem where beauties are as common as clouds, big sister's beauty is unparalleled. Even my younger sister feels inferior when she sees you and doesn't dare to stand next to you. It's because big sister's brilliance can always subdue my younger sister unknowingly. Pang Yuan was elated by Shangguan Mai's flattering words. Knowing her character, she didn't show much happiness on her face, although she didn't hate her as much as before. But her face was still cold and indifferent. My Fei, you know, this concubine has never liked these flattering words. I know. I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm telling the truth. Even if I don't say it in front of you, I think so in my heart. Alright, tell me why you're here. Don't try to be glib. Yes. Shangguan Mai looked at her with a smile, and then looked at the servants in the bedroom. The smell of blood in the hall had long made Pang Yuan impatient. Moreover, the smell of blood didn't calm her irritable heart. Instead, it made her even more irritable. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find bosom friends Tilda. Chapter 8:11. Why are you still kneeling here? Why don't you get out of here? Could it be that you want this empress to invite you out? Several palace maids and eunuchs who had been beaten beyond recognition had long wanted to leave, but they did not dare to move because the imperial concubine did not speak. They were afraid to make a decision without authorization and make the imperial concubine even more unhappy. At that time, they would not even be able to keep their lives. Now they heard Pang Yuan take the initiative to ask them to get out. As if they were granted amnesty, they quickly got up from the ground and kept kowtowing to her to thank her. Thank you, imperial concubine. Thank you, imperial concubine. Even Xiao also got up from the ground and ran out with the palace maids and eunuchs without looking back. Now that they are all out, if you have anything to say, just say it to me. Imperial concubine, you can go too. Yes, imperial concubine. Yu obediently took the order and retreated. Soon, in the huge Pyongyang palace, only she and Pang Yuan were left. Shangguan Mai looked at Pang Yuan and smiled first. Pang Yuan was annoyed to see this foxy smile. Looking at the harem, before Shen Yueji came, the only person who could be regarded as an opponent by her was this Shangguan Mai. The reincarnation of a natural fox, a seductive demon. If it were not for the fact that her brother did not like women like her at all, she was really afraid that her brother would be seduced by her one day. Shangguan Mai, I am not a man. Put away your way of seducing men, you will only make me feel more disgusted. Shangguan Mai felt wronged. Elder sister, appearance and figure, that is given by parents, younger sister does not want to be like this. Listening to her answer that did not match her heart, Pang Yuan sneered again and again. In the end, you don't want to, or are you crazy to think that you don't know how good your appearance is and how enviable it is? Younger sister does not think that I am so good. If we really talk about excellence, how can younger sister compare to imperial concubine sister? If younger sister can be in the same situation as elder sister, not to mention my current appearance, as long as I can exchange for elder sister's appearance and life experience, even if I am asked to die, I am willing. Even if she knew that this slut was just saying some flattering words, who wouldn't want to hear this kind of flattery? Especially someone like Pang Yuan who was overly vain. She sneered a few times. Did you come to me to come up with a plan, or just to say these flattering words to make this queen happy? Little sister, I heard that big sister had a quarrel with the Empress Dowager and the white-haired granny. Seeing that Pang Yuan's expression wasn't very good, Shangguanmai didn't try to avoid suspicion at all. Not only that, younger sister also heard that last night, the emperor doted on that woman from Foam Country. Because Jie couldn't stand the emperor's favoritism towards her, she angrily ran to Xingyang Palace to make a fuss and got slapped by the white-haired granny. Bang! She slammed the table in front of her again. This time, Shangguanmai pretended to be surprised and covered her mouth. Sister, don't be angry. I only heard about it. If you want to blame someone, blame those gossipers in the harem. I heard them talking about you and ordered them to execute them on the spot. Big sister, little sister has already helped you vent your anger. Not only did Pang Yuan's expression not improve because of her words, it became even more serious. Shangguanmai, what do you mean? Or do you think that because your Shangguan family is a first-rank official in the imperial court, I will not do anything to you because I am really afraid of you? If you want to chat about explosively cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 8:12. Sister, what are you talking about? Although the Shangguan family is a first-rank official in the imperial court, you can do whatever you want with us if you're not satisfied. Moreover, you can simply accuse the Shangguan family of a crime. Not only will the emperor believe it, even the ministers in the imperial court will not doubt Grand Tutor Pang's prestige. It's good that you know. I know. Of course I know. I don't want you to become my enemy. I'm here to help you. Help me. Are you helping me or are you plotting something else? Shangguanmai, do you think I'm a fool? Sister, one is an outsider and the other is one of us. If it were you, who would you side with? Although Shen Yueji is from the Foam Country, she doesn't have a strong background and is far away from her home country. She's easy to deal with. The only problem is that she's the emperor's favorite. Not only that, even the Empress Dowager and the white-haired granny are on her side and protecting her. It's even harder for you to hurt her. Sister, you have to know that that woman is our enemy now. No matter what happened in the past, we have to work together now. Only by working with me can we deal with that woman together. Otherwise, if you continue to fight with me, neither of us will benefit. That outsider will benefit from it. Sister, just think about it and you'll understand. Pang Yuan probably felt that Shangguanmai's words were reasonable. In fact, Pang Yuan knew this even without her saying it. Otherwise, she wouldn't let the woman she had hated for so many years stay. Then tell me, how should I work with you to deal with her? Sister, Shangguanmai smiled and leaned closer to her. She whispered in her ear, since you're going to deal with her openly, there are so many people in the palace who are protecting her. You'll definitely be at a disadvantage. Since that's the case, why don't you do it secretly? Sister is also an imperial concubine of a country, the master of Dark North. I think the Empress Dowager doesn't want to see sister and that woman to the point of falling out. In this way, the Empress Dowager will be stuck in the middle. If you're magnanimous and are willing to let bygones be bygones with that woman from the Foam Kingdom, then not only will you leave a good impression on the Empress Dowager, but you've also never interacted with Shen Yueji before. You don't know her, so why don't you take this opportunity to befriend her? And then try her weight. You mean, you want this consort to take the initiative to seek peace with her? With your status, even if you want to sue for peace, it will be that woman who comes to you. You just have to sit there, and even if she has 100 guts, she won't dare to disrespect you. There are countless tricks in the harem. Sister, I came here today to give you advice. Sister, why don't you consider it? This Shen Yueji, as long as you are willing to cooperate, I will help you get rid of her. What do you think? How will you help me? Aren't you afraid? What else can be more important than the safety of Dark North and the safety of His Majesty? This woman from the Foam Kingdom obviously has ulterior motives towards His Majesty and Dark North. Sister, I just want to unite with you to fight against the invaders. After Shangguan Mai left, the two of them had their own thoughts. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 8:13. Yua looked at the concubine walking in front of her. Seeing that there was no one around, she couldn't help but come in front of her. Concubine, do you think this concubine Pang will be fooled? From the fact that she let me enter her pure young palace today, it is enough to prove to me that she has been fooled. Shangguan Mai looked at her with a smile. Concubine is wise. Sure enough, everything is under your control. Shangguan Mai smiled. She not only wanted to get rid of Shun Yueji, but also Pang Yuan. She only relied on the backing of the Pang family to be able to do whatever she wanted in the harem until now. Others were afraid of her, but she wasn't. Such a brainless woman was here to pave the way for her. Concubine, are you really going to cooperate with Concubine Mai? After Shangguan Mai left, Xiao'er came in worriedly. After all, she was a maid who had followed Pang Yuan for many years. After Shangguan Mai left, Pang Yuan quickly told her what Shangguan Mai had said to her. Because of Shangguan Mai, Pang Yuan was not so angry. Even now when she looked at Xiao'er, she was too lazy to lose her temper. Isn't this asking for your opinion? Xiao'er was so scared that her body trembled subconsciously. I don't dare. This matter is all up to the concubine. I am just a lowly servant, how dare I give advice for the concubine? Xiao'er, this concubine is not asking you to give me advice. When have your bad ideas ever succeeded? It was okay if she didn't say it. When she said it, Pang Yuan was angry. But because she was still happy now, she just glared at her and no longer looked at her. Shangguan Mai has always been the most scheming one in this harem. Even the Empress Dowager has reminded me to deal with her less. Although this concubine doesn't like this woman, at least I have taken the Empress Dowager's words to heart. I have not interacted with her for so many years. I know that all these years, it has been this concubine Mai who doesn't know what's good for her. She has been looking for trouble with you. But can you believe that you will cooperate with her? Are you not afraid that Imperial concubine Mai wants to drag you down with her? Xiao'er, I'm already in the water now. I'm not afraid that she will drag me down. Don't forget what I've done in secret. I've formed an alliance with the dark poisonous cult. The Empress Dowager and the others know about this. Even my brother, the Emperor, is aware of it. Although he didn't. Hearing this, Pang Yuan's face lit up with a touch of joy. Even her eyes brightened. Xiao'er, what do you think? This consort treats the woman he admires like this and even wants to take her life. Why isn't Brother Emperor angry? Nor did he come to cause trouble for me. When Xiao'er heard this, she hurriedly smiled and replied, that's because His Majesty has you in his heart, Your Highness. If it was any of the concubines in the harem, even if it was Imperial concubine Mai, if the Emperor knew that they dared to treat the woman he likes like this, he would have already punished them. Is that so? Does this mean that Brother Emperor still has me in his heart? In his heart, he still knows which is more important. Thinking of father entering the palace today, he must be advising Brother Emperor in the Imperial study not to make the woman from Feng country the Empress. She wondered if Brother Emperor would listen to her father's words. I've decided to cooperate with Shangguan Mai. I'll agree to her request. It doesn't matter if she's using me or if she has other intentions. As long as I can deal with that bitch, I'm not afraid of being used by her. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, she would follow Yudu literature. Chapter 8:14. Pang Yuan narrowed her eyes, a disdainful sneer on her beautiful face. Her Pang family was powerful in the imperial court. Even if Shangguan Mai had the guts, she wouldn't dare to scheme against her like this. If she did, not only would her father not let her off, even the Empress Dowager would not let her off easily. Imperial study room. The young emperor's expression wasn't good. He sat on the dragon throne and held a stack of memorials in his hands. He said he was reading, but his handsome face was gloomy. A haze spread from his handsome face, giving people a feeling of fear and peace of mind. Even so, Grand Tutor Pang still kneeled on the ground calmly. Your Majesty, Minister, General Chen, Minister Liu, and the other officials have all sent their memorials. All of you have contributed greatly since the founding of the Dark North Kingdom. Whether it's your words or actions, everything you've said or done, it's all for the sake of the Dark North Kingdom. I hope that your Majesty will reconsider and give up on the idea of making that Feng country woman the Empress. Since ancient times, the Empress has always been based on looks, background, and talent. I've already investigated that Feng country woman. Although she has a good background and looks, she's the concubine of the Feng country's emperor. A concubine of a country coming to the Dark North Kingdom to be the Empress. What would it look like if word got out? The Feng country and the Dark North Kingdom mind our own business. Now that your Majesty has stolen the concubine of the Feng country's emperor, you're trying to incite a war between the two countries. For the innocent people of the two countries, I hope that your Majesty will reconsider and reconsider. You can't act impulsively, your Majesty. Pang Shen tried to use this to persuade the emperor to change his mind. Who knew that after he said this, the man's handsome face didn't change at all. He calmly threw the memorials in his hands onto the dragon throne in front of him. Killing intent gathered in his eyes. Today's memorials were different from the previous days. They were all memorials to impeach Shen Yueji. Without a doubt, they were saying that she wasn't allowed to be the Empress because her identity didn't allow it. With such an identity, she definitely had many goals and schemes in coming to the Dark North Kingdom. All of them advised him to reconsider, all of them asked him to reconsider, but the result was the same. A few old officials had already threatened him with death. These officials were not like the rebels. They had followed him since his father was still alive. After his father passed away, he and his mother had lived safely until now under their protection. Naturally, Bei Mingshong couldn't treat them the same way as those rebels. Pang Shen saw that although the young man did not speak, his tone was not as unyielding as before. He couldn't help but be happy and continued, Your Majesty, since ancient times, women have always been a source of disaster. Your Majesty is the ruler of the Dark North, you should put the country and the people first, not to mention this woman with ulterior motives. If you leave her, not, do you, the people. Shen, you, and the people, Chen, Shen, she, I said. I, Shen. He, I, comma, the comma he. He didn't have the coldness and ruthlessness of the past. Instead, he seemed to be easy to negotiate. Being easy to negotiate was much better than not listening to a few words of persuasion. Pang Shen tried to calm his tone and didn't want to touch his bad luck. He took a step back. Your Majesty, there are many beauties in the harem. There are all kinds of beauties. What if I only like Jia? If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, talk about life, find friends Tilda. Chapter 8:15. This, Pang Shen hesitated and quickly said, If your Majesty only likes Miss Shen, I wonder if your Majesty likes her beauty or her talent and personality. If it's talent, your Majesty, I can definitely find a woman who is similar to her in this world. I guarantee that she will be more beautiful than Miss Shen. If the women of Feng country are different from us, then I can also go to Feng country personally and choose an outstanding woman for your Majesty. I guarantee that your Majesty will be satisfied. The man's cold lips curled into a cold smile. Since they are both women of Feng country, why can't Jia? Your Majesty, Pang Shen tried to persuade him. This Shen Yueji is the imperial concubine of the Feng country's emperor. An imperial concubine of a country came to northern underworld with your Majesty. This isn't just because she is a woman of Feng country. If the Feng country's emperor knows about this, it will cause a war between the two countries. Southern Mountain and Feng country have always been eyeing northern underworld. In this internal conflict, many of their spies have appeared. If they work together to attack northern underworld, your Majesty, you will be putting the people of northern underworld in deep trouble. No matter if its father when he was still alive or Imperial Tutor Pang is a first-rank official in the court, they are respected and loved by the people of the capital. An emperor's ambition is undoubtedly to conquer the country and take over the country. Even without it will still be the same. Why is Imperial Tutor telling me this? Your Majesty. Seeing that the Emperor didn't listen to him even after he said so much, the Emperor was still stubborn. Okay. He finally made the biggest concession. Since Your Majesty insists on this, as an official, I naturally don't dare to say anything more. However, Your Majesty still needs to consider the matter of the Empress. Almost no one in the Imperial Court is willing to let this woman from the Feng Nation be the Empress of the Dark North Kingdom. Not to mention her ulterior motives, her identity as the Imperial concubine of Feng Country doesn't allow it. I hope Your Majesty will reconsider. If you really like that girl, you can make her a concubine first. As for the Empress, I am not talented, so I recommend myself. Although Wanna is lively and active, she is my daughter after all. She is proficient in the 4 arts. In the capital, there are few women who can compare to her in terms of talent or background. After staying in the palace for so many years, she has learned some of the rules of the palace. Plus, Your Majesty has handed the Phoenix Seal to her for many years. The position of Empress is empty. If Your Majesty wants to confer an Empress, why don't you consider Wn? She has loved Your Majesty for many years. I believe that her feelings for Your Majesty will not be any worse than that woman from Feng Country. Bei Mingshong's expression was indifferent. I want to make Jia Empress, I just told Grand Tutor Pang and you, I didn't ask for your opinions. If you don't want to, then that's your own business, it has nothing to do with me, understand? Your Majesty. When Grand Tutor Pang heard this, his eyes widened. Your Majesty, if you do this, you will disappoint all the officials. Disappoint? The man smiled coldly, his voice was shallow, without the slightest emotion. Since you are disheartened, quickly elect the next emperor to assist, instead of always thinking about Jin alone. This North Dark Kingdom's throne, if any of you wants to sit, Jin can give it to you. Your Majesty. In this life, Pang Shen had never been afraid of anything. He had bled on the battlefield, but he had never blinked. If you want to talk about explosively cute concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow UU literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find bosom friends Tilda. Chapter 8:16. The only thing he was afraid of was Bei Mingshong not becoming the emperor. He didn't understand. Other emperors would fight for the throne even if they had to. But Bei Mingshong didn't seem to have any interest in the throne since he was young. If he wasn't the only son of the late emperor, did Pang Shen have to go through so much trouble to trick him into becoming the emperor? Plus, every time they had something, they had to ask the emperor to do it. They thought their threats were effective, but they didn't know that the emperor's threat was enough to make them swallow it. There was nothing they could do. He watched as the young and handsome emperor got down from his throne in front of him and left. Pang Shen didn't know how to stop him. Seeing Eunuch Liu walking out, he suddenly grabbed Eunuch Liu's hand. Eunuch Liu was shocked and turned to look at him. Grand Tutor Pang, what are you doing? Hurry up and let go of my hand, people will misunderstand if they see this. Pang Shen, letting go of his hand, Pang Shen covered his mouth awkwardly and coughed. Eunuch Liu, please don't misunderstand. I have something to ask you. Eunuch Liu looked at the emperor walking away and said respectfully to Pang Shen, Grand Tutor Pang, please ask. But ask quickly, I still have to serve the emperor. Pang Shen glanced at him. You must have seen the girl from the Feng Country, what does she look like? Oh. Eunuch Liu purposely kept him in suspense. He smiled and looked at him, not afraid of offending him. Grand Tutor Pang, you really want me to tell the truth? I ask you, and you answer truthfully. I naturally want to hear the truth. If not, why would I want to hear it? Then, Grand Tutor Pang, please don't be angry. Pang Shen frowned. Just tell the truth, I won't be angry. Your Majesty is the noble emperor and the number of beauties in the harem is innumerable. This servant has seen so many beauties for so many years and my eyes have seen enough. I thought that no matter what kind of beauty I see, I would not be stunned. But the appearance of Miss Shen still made me stunned. In terms of looks, she's even better than Imperial Consort Pang. His daughter's beauty was well known in the entire northern kingdom. To be honest, the number of people who were more beautiful than his daughter could be counted with one's fingers. He didn't expect that Feng country's imperial concubine Shun was actually so beautiful. He couldn't help but think of Shun Yueji, the eldest daughter of the Shun family's general, Shun He, who was known as the #1 beauty of the Feng nation. No wonder the emperor was head over heels in love with her. But that's not right. Thinking about it again, Wana seemed to have mentioned this Shun Yueji to me. When the emperor was pestered by Shun Yueji in Feng country, the emperor had always been impatient. However, because Shun Yueji was the eldest daughter of the Shun family, even if he was impatient, he couldn't do anything to her. How long had it been? Did the emperor really have to choose her? This made him even more convinced that what Wana said to him, the emperor must have been drugged by that woman from Feng country. Otherwise, the emperor's attitude towards her wouldn't have changed so quickly in such a short period of time. Thinking of this, he looked at Eunuch Liu. Eunuch Liu, you are the emperor's favorite, and your words carry a lot of weight in the harem. I have something to ask for your help with. If you want to talk about explosively cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 8:17. Eunuch Liu smiled. Grand Tutor Pang, you are flattering me. In terms of weight, who in the imperial court can compare to you, Grand Tutor Pang? As for the help that Grand Tutor Pang mentioned, after he smiled, he quickly hid the smile on his face. The change between smiling and not smiling was so fast. I won't help. It was a very blunt refusal. Pang Shun himself was shocked. In the past, when he entered the palace, he had fought with Eunuch Liu face to face and talked to him. He thought that he had never offended him, right? He didn't react for a moment when he said the word I won't help. It was completely out of his expectation. Won't help? Does he know what I want him to help with? He hasn't said it yet. Eunuch Liu saw his expression and knew what he wanted to say. He shook his head and said calmly, Grand Tutor Pang, this servant has been by the emperor's side for so many years. There is an old saying that accompanying the emperor is like accompanying a tiger. This servant has been by the emperor's side all these years and has been safe and sound. Isn't it because this servant can distinguish the pros and cons and knows the way to survive? Since I am the emperor's man, I should be on the emperor's side. I shouldn't betray the emperor, hide it from the emperor, and do something that will make the emperor unhappy. Pang Shun's face darkened when he heard what he said. Eunuch Liu, you know that the woman from Feng country has ulterior motives. She is the imperial concubine of Feng country's emperor. How can she marry into Dark North Kingdom and become the empress of Dark North Kingdom? She saw that the emperor liked her and indulged her. Relying on the emperor's love and indulgence, she committed all sorts of crimes. If you don't unite with this official at this time, you're not siding with the emperor, but harming him. Do you understand? Grand Tutor Pang can't slander Miss Shun just because his daughter is neglected by His Majesty. Although Miss Shun's identity can't be exposed, at least I have talked to her a few times. She is never spoiled when she does things, and she won't do whatever she wants because His Majesty likes her. She only does what she should do and what she shouldn't do. She won't deliberately please someone, and she won't deliberately provoke or offend someone. It's rare to see such a quiet and indifferent girl in the back palace. How can it be like what Grand Tutor Pang said, that she has ulterior motives? Eunuch Liu sneered. I won't hide it from Grand Tutor Pang. No matter when it comes to looking at people or doing things, I do things based on the feeling they give me. When I interact with Imperial Concubine Pang has a smile on her face, but it's as if there's a needle hidden in her heart. I don't know how many times she has scolded my eunuch in a place I don't know. In comparison, I prefer the truth that Miss Shun brings to my family. So. His voice softened, probably because he saw Pang Shun's ugly expression. After all, he was also a grand tutor of a country. Although he was a favored person by the emperor's side, he was still a servant. A servant was far from qualified to be arrogant in front of a first-grade grand tutor. This servant is not on His Majesty's side, but on Miss Shen's side. Grand Tutor Pang is so angry that His Majesty favors a girl from another country. Without knowing the course of events and the situation, he hastily concluded that Miss Shen has ulterior motives. Grand Tutor Pang, you definitely don't know what Imperial Concubine Pang has done in private. In the face of his words, Pang Shen's old face finally couldn't keep a straight face. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute beloved concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 818. Squeak. The female ghost finally couldn't hold on any longer. She wailed miserably and trembled under the demon-vanquishing mirror before gradually shrinking. On the dam, Jin Siyu and the others finally heaved sighs of relief. Zhong Tianxi continued pressing down on the demon-subduing mirror, not daring to slow down at all. The female ghost continued to shrink until she was only the size of a palm, completely suppressed under the demon-subduing mirror. Zhong Tianxi was overjoyed. He shook open the Heavenly Master Soul Collecting banner, intending to keep it. She was too strong. He could only take it back first and then think of a way to destroy it. But at this moment, Su Su suddenly shouted, "Cousin, someone's flying over the water. Past!" Zhong Tianxi was stunned. He didn't know what kind of situation it was. Because Zhong Tianxi was at the bottom of the dam that was taller than a person blocked his line of sight, so Zhong Tianxi could not see the situation above. It's Chen Shu. This guy knows how to float on water. His feet touched the water and he flew over, Jin Siyu shouted. Wen Qian also said, he's not drifting on water. He must have been possessed by the Grandmaster of the Maroshan sect. He's very powerful. As a disciple of the Dao sect, Wen Qian was more knowledgeable than Jin Siyu about the various sects' Dharma spells. Fuck, it's him again. Zhong Tianxi instructed Gong Zigui and Tian Xiaohe. Yin-yang boy, stop him. Lure him somewhere else, pay attention to your own safety, and don't block his way. Wen Qian, Susu, protect your chrysanthemum and that thing. Everyone agreed and went their separate ways. Gong Zigui and Tian Xiaohe hovered in the air, stirring up a whirlwind on the surface of the pond. The whirlwind wrapped around a large pile of broken grass and stood in front of Chen Shu. Su Su and Jin Siyu rushed to the fish farmer's hut to protect their chrysanthemums. Wen Qian put on the hood and hid behind the hut. She held the scarecrow that she had prepared in advance, ready to launch a sneak attack using the Chimanduan jar. Under the bright moonlight, Chen Shu tapped his feet on the surface of the water, spread his arms, and swooped down like a giant bat. Gong Zigui and Tian Xiaohe had just started spinning when Chen Shu arrived. With a loud bang, the grass in the middle of the whirlwind was hit by Chen Shu's head and immediately scattered. Ah! Tian Xiaohe and Gong Zigui were at the periphery of the whirlwind, but they still suffered a great impact. They screamed and flew to the sides. Fortunately, it wasn't a head-on collision. Otherwise, the two ghost children wouldn't have been able to withstand it. It was even possible that their souls would have been destroyed. After the collision, Chen Shu's momentum slowed down. He turned around and lightly landed on the dam, standing next to the fish farmer's hut. What kind of monster is this? How dare you help the Avildor? The Marrow Mountain sect leader is here. Those who obey me will live, and those who stand in my way will die, Chen Shu shouted before he landed on the ground. It was still the same as before. Before the person arrived, the awesomeness arrived first. He first revealed his identity as the sect leader of Marrow Mountain. Wen Qian didn't say anything. She hid behind the house, raised her hand, and threw the scarecrow out. There's another ambush. Chen Shu was taken aback. He quickly turned around and swung his lightning palm down. After all, he was the Marrow Mountain sect leader. His skills were not just for show. He had the demeanor of a hero. However, Wen Qian had already used the scarecrow as cover to switch positions. She turned around from the other side of the hut, leaped into the air, and kicked Chen Shu. Chen Shu lost his footing. He wanted to dodge when he heard the wind behind him, but it was too late. Bam! Wen Qian's kick landed squarely on Chen Shu's right shoulder. Chen Shu was currently possessed by his grandmaster. His body was as tough as an iron tree, and he wouldn't have been bothered by punches and kicks. However, Wen Chen's angle of attack was ingenious. She took advantage of the moment when Chen Shu turned around. She used 30% of her strength to borrow 70% of Chen Shu's strength. Chen Shu staggered and fell backward. He landed on the surface of the water with a splash, creating a huge splash. The poor Marrow Mountain sect leader did not even get a good look at the assailant's face. Wen Chen didn't have it easy either. She felt a strong rebound force after her kick landed. Her entire body was pushed back toward the bottom of the dam. Coincidentally, Zhong Tianxi had already retrieved Ning Fengmin's soul. He looked up and saw Wen Chen falling. He quickly opened his arms and caught her in mid-air. However, Wen Chen's fall was too strong for Zhong Tianxi to handle. He fell on his butt. Fortunately, they were in a farmland. The straw was still laid out in the fields after the autumn harvest. If he had fallen on the cement, he would have broken his tailbone. "Are you all right?" Zhong Tianxi asked in a low voice. "I'm fine." Wen Chen straightened herself up from Zhong Tianxi's arms. Zhong Tianxi was relieved. He got up and rushed to the top of the dam. Wen Chen quickly caught up with him. However, when they reached the top of the dam, Zhong Tianxi saw Chen Shu lying motionless in the water like a dead man. Did Wen Chen kill Chen Shu? Zhong Tianxi was sweating profusely. He turned around and asked, "Why isn't he moving?" "I don't know. I just kicked him," Wen Chen said in a low voice. "Let's take a look." Zhong Tianxi dived into the water, grabbed Chen Shu's hair, and dragged him to the shore. Chen Shu did not move at all, allowing himself to be manipulated. Jin Siyu and Su Su came out of the fish farmer's hut and looked at the unconscious Marrow Mountain sect leader. Zhong Tianxi and Su Su checked Chen Shu's condition after they laid him down on the dam. Gong Zigui and Tian Xiaohe, who had sustained serious injuries from the earlier attack, were trembling as they floated over to Chen Shu, who was lying on the ground, not daring to approach him. "He's not dead. It must have been too tiring to hunt down Ning Fengmin for the past 2 days, and he forced himself on Grandmaster. He must have fainted after falling into the water," Zhong Tianxi said after checking on Chen Shu. Su Su also agreed and nodded repeatedly. "That scared the hell out of me. I thought I killed the Marrow Mountain sect leader." Wen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. If Chen Shu really died, it would be a major incident in the world. Not only Wen Chen, but even Zhong Tianxi would have a hard time explaining himself. Zhong Tianxi stood up, waved his hand and said, "Pack up, take your things and leave first. Chen Shu is fine. I'll wait here for him to wake up." Wen Chen and Jin Siyu looked at each other. They packed up the chrysanthemum and the cauldron, then returned to the villa with Su Su and the 2 ghost children. Zhong Tianxi was in a good mood. He calmly sat on the shore and cultivated while waiting for Chen Shu to wake up. However, Chen Shu had not woken up yet. 2 figures walked toward the south side of the shore. They were looking around in a hurry. Zhong Tianxi looked at them in the moonlight and chuckled. It was Shu Sen and Hu Ku pretending to be the Condor heroes again. Shu Sen and his wife also saw Zhong Tianxi. They quickened their pace and asked loudly, "Who's that sitting over there? Are you fellow Daoist Chen Shu?" Zhong Tianxi was sitting on the ground. He and his wife had not recognized him yet. Seeing Shu Sen and his wife approaching, Zhong Tianxi stood up, pointed at Chen Shu on the ground, and said with a smile, "The one sitting just now is not fellow Daoist Chen Shu. The one sleeping here is your fellow Daoist Chen Shu." At the same time, Chapter 8:19. So that's how it is. Shuang Shi showed a look of understanding. She had always believed in Mrs. Words, including these 2 days in Xingyang Palace. To be honest, she thought that Miss had forgotten about it when Miss didn't pay her respects to the Empress Dowager. She was really worried for Miss. Who didn't know that the Empress Dowager's words carried the most weight in the imperial harem? Plus, the Empress Dowager was the Emperor's biological mother. She was afraid that if Miss didn't go to see her, people would talk about it and there would be people with bad intentions gossiping in the Empress Dowager's ears. ruining Miss's reputation and causing the Empress Dowager to have prejudice and estrangement with Miss. There's no one in the imperial harem that I need to worry about or please. The only one I'm worried about now is Mo Wushang. She sighed. With her status as the imperial consort of the Foam country, if he insisted on making her the empress, not only would it be difficult to explain to the imperial court, but even the people of the northern underworld would have something to say about his actions. She had long accepted her identity as the empress. To her, it didn't matter whether she did it or not, as long as Mo Wushang treated her sincerely. Miss, are you worried about the son-in-law? Worried about me for what? A man's deep voice came from behind. Shuang. She was so scared that she hurriedly knelt on the ground. Greetings, Your Majesty. Shen Yueji turned around and was about to bow down. A strong and large hand supported her firmly. The man's deep eyes landed on her face, which didn't have any makeup on. After seeing her, all that was left was gentleness and deep affection. Didn't I say it before? There's no need for such formalities between you and me. That was in the past. You were the regent of Foam Country and I was the imperial consort of Foam Country. Our identities were the same. But it's different now. You're the emperor of the North Underworld. I should pay my respects to you. Now that everyone in the imperial harem is looking at my mistakes, I naturally can't let them hold anything against me. The man's dark eyes darkened and he held her in his arms. You don't need to care about these rules and other people's words. You only need to know that no matter what happens, I will protect you. Listening to the man's strong heartbeat, Shen Yueji curled her lips and smiled. I know. She had always known how much he doted on her and how much he had done for her. I thought you would have a good sleep today. I didn't expect you to wake up so soon. Seeing that she seems to be in good spirits, the man lovingly scratches her pretty nose. Shen Yueji blushed when she heard that. Almost immediately, she thought of him and her last night. She blushed and pushed the man away. Don't you have a pile of memorials to go through in the imperial study? Why are you back so soon? There were indeed more memorials than usual, but they were all impeachment memorials. They were all about how to threaten him and how to force him to not make her the empress with death. Mo Wushang didn't want to look anymore after looking at a few. These are all unimportant things. You just came to the northern underworld. How about I show you around? Shen Yueji's expression changed. That. She averted her gaze. I'm not feeling too well. I'm afraid I can't go too far. If you want to relax, you can go alone. I have to go back, she cried out in alarm as she was carried by Mo Wushang. She subconsciously wrapped her arms around the man's neck. Worried that she would fall, she buried her head in the man's arms and said, Mo Wushang, what are you doing? Put me down. Chapter 820. I'll carry you there. No. People will gossip if they see us. The man's footsteps paused. His voice no longer carried a hint of a smile. Instead, it carried a hint of melancholy. I hope that the way you and I get along is like a normal family. You don't have to worry because of my identity. There's nothing between us. There are too many people in the harem. If they see us, my reputation will be tarnished. The man snorted. I'm here. Who dares to talk? If they dare to talk nonsense, I'll cut off their tongues. Eunuch Liu chased after him for a long time before catching up to him. However, the moment he caught up, he heard the emperor's words. He was so frightened that he quickly covered his mouth. Mo Wushang carried her to the Sun and Moon Lake. After walking around the lake, they went to the pavilion. The man didn't seem to feel tired at all. He walked from dawn to dusk. Although they had met many concubines during this period, they had finally met the emperor face to face. They were about to bow to him, but unexpectedly, the emperor they missed didn't even pay attention to them. He directly held the beautiful woman in his arms and walked away. It was as if they didn't exist. They had been in the palace for a while. In order to gain the emperor's favor, they used all their skills. Finally, when they were told that the emperor wasn't in the palace, they behaved for a while. After the emperor returned, they tried again. They didn't get the news as fast as Pang Yuan. They didn't have a family background like Pang Yuan, so they could send people to investigate. They had only just found out about Shen Yueji's identity. They had also just found out about the emperor's love for this woman from the foam country. Originally, they wanted to destroy Shen Yueji's prestige. They weren't convinced that this woman from another country was so good that she could gain the emperor's favor. Now that the emperor walked past them, their thoughts of finding trouble with him stopped instantly because of the emperor's presence. Because Mo Wushang gave them the feeling that the emperor could ignore them. However, if they dared to find trouble with Shen Yueji, they would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. Along the way, Shen Yueji had seen countless beauties in Mo Wushang's harem. Although she knew that he had no feelings for them, Shen Yueji felt flustered and uncomfortable just by looking at him. She pushed the man's chest. "There's a pavilion ahead. I want to come down and rest first." Upon hearing this, Mo Wushang carried her to the pavilion and carefully placed her down. Looking at her wrinkled little face, a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. Jealous? Jealous? These two words made Shen Yueji very uncomfortable. She glared at him fiercely. "Do I look like the kind of person who will be jealous?" Mo Wushang nodded. "I only have you in my heart. I know, I just don't like them." All of them clearly knew that this man's thoughts were not on them, but they still stared at him. Their expressions, eyes, and gazes seemed to want to stick to him. In short, it made her very uncomfortable, but she was in someone else's territory, and she didn't want to be so ruthless, so she could only bear with it. However, even though she had tolerated it, she was extremely displeased in her heart. Pa. Chapter 821. You slut, do you really think that just because concubine Mai praised you a few words, you can rely on a new backer? I'm warning you, as long as I'm here, you'll never have a chance to turn over. In the quiet pavilion, there were suddenly a few sounds of arguing. Looking for the sound, Shen Yueji looked towards the center right and saw a few colorful figures gathered together in an imperial garden on the right. Because it was a little far away and those flowers and plants were really an eyesore, she could only see the rough outline and the sound of women arguing. And the woman in white who was kneeling on the ground and did not dare to raise her head, letting her hit and scold her, trembling all over. "Wu Jiaoyi, I beg you, let my concubine Mai go. My concubine Mai will always remember your kindness and never dare to ride on your head. I beg Wu Jiaoyi, on account of my concubine Mai's years of loyal service to you, you lowly servant, when the master is speaking, is it your place to interrupt? Someone, throw this slut into the water for me." The sound became more and more chaotic and the noise became louder and louder. Then she looked at the man's gloomy face. It seemed that the noise over there made the man uncomfortable. Shen Yueji couldn't help curling her lips. Looking at the man's unhappy face, she didn't know why, but in her heart, she felt much more comfortable. She poked him with her hand. "Hey, Mo Wushang, those are all the women in your harem. Although Jiaoyi's position is not high, but that woman's appearance is quite outstanding. You see the one kneeling on the ground? Dressed in white, like a fairy, not eating the food of the world, are you sure you don't want to help her? You know, now is the time when the beauty needs your help, maybe you help her this time, Shio." His lips were blocked. Shen Yueji was shocked and her eyes widened. The man bit her delicate lips evilly, his voice was hoarse and threatening. "But I was too gentle to Jia last night, so that Jia can still say these words." Hearing him mention last night's matter, Shen Yueji's little face, with a swish, burst red again. She directly used her hand to block his mouth. "Don't say any more. Eunuch Liu. Your Majesty, your servant is here. Drive those who are in the way away." "Yes." Liu Eunuch was also flustered, especially when he saw how affectionate the emperor and young lady Shen were, yet this reckless person came to disturb them. They really didn't care about the occasion when they quarreled. Each and every one of them had an annoying face. Usually, they pretended to be gentle and considerate, but today, they didn't know that the emperor was here. Didn't they all reveal their true colors? Eunuch Liu sighed and went to chase them away. In the end, when the kneeling servant saw him, it was as if she had seen a life-saving straw. She grabbed the hem of his clothes and said, "Eunuch Liu, is His Majesty here? Was the emperor here?" "Your Majesty, please save my mistress. If your Majesty doesn't save this servant's mistress, she will be beaten to death by Wu Jiaoyi." "Your Majesty." That lowly servant girl cried out loudly as if she had suffered great grievances and torture. Then, he looked at the woman in white who was being bullied on the ground. From the beginning to the end, her head was lowered, and she did not beg for mercy, nor did she say a word. Only half of her face could be seen. She was indeed a beauty. On the other hand, the person who hit her had an arrogant and despotic face. After seeing Eunuch Liu, his expression changed completely. At the beginning, he was baring his fangs and brandishing his claws, and his face was fierce, but now, he was like a little girl who didn't know the world. If he wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow UU Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 822. It was as if she had arrived at an unknown place. She didn't know what was going on. His Majesty? Wu Jiaoyi's lips trembled as she looked at Eunuch Liu in disbelief. Her eyes darted around, as if she was looking for Mo Wushang. Eunuch Liu was the emperor's favorite. Wherever the emperor was, he would be there. As long as he appeared, the emperor would also be there. He would never leave the emperor's side and wander around the harem alone. Thinking about it, the emperor must be tired from dealing with the memorials and came here to relax. Thinking of how she had attacked Chiohan just now, did the emperor see it? Did the emperor feel sorry for Chiohan? That's why he sent Eunuch Liu to warn her. Yes, that must be the case. This foxy woman always pretended to be weak and pitiful, making people think that she had suffered a lot of grievances. Wu Jiaoyi's heart was filled with hatred, but because of Eunuch Liu's presence, the emperor must be watching her in the dark. If she made a move on Chiohan at this time. But, she gritted her teeth and explained, "Eunuch Liu, is the emperor really here? Where is the emperor?" She wanted to see the emperor and explain it to him personally. It wasn't without reason that she hit Chiohan, but this woman was too cheap. When she was a maidservant, she treated her well. But this woman actually betrayed her. Such a lowly maidservant betrayed her because of some benefits. What was the use of keeping her alive? But she, with her own weak appearance, sought refuge with Mai Fei Niang, and was promoted to the same position as her by Mai Fei Niang. Not only could she be on equal footing with her, she also had such a big backer like Mai Fei Niang. Although every time she hit her, scolded her, and bullied her, she did not fight back. She knew that the purpose of doing so was just to gain sympathy. After knowing her thoughts, every time she hit or scolded her, she would find a place where no one was around. However, she did not expect to bump into the emperor. She thought the place she found was quiet and secluded enough, but she did not expect to bump into the emperor. Her intestines were almost green with regret. If she had known that she would meet the emperor here, she wouldn't have. Eunuch Liu had long accepted the matters in the harem. Sometimes, what he saw with his own eyes might not be true, and what he heard might not be true. Therefore, he did not intend to say much to Wu Jiaoyi. He just wanted to ask them to move aside. She didn't want to disturb His Majesty and Miss Shun from relaxing and ruin their good mood. As for the maidservant who was being beaten, she kept tugging at the hem of his clothes, unwilling to let go. She looked delicate and pitiful, as if the person who had been wronged wasn't her master, but herself. Eunuch Liu, her ladyship was originally a maidservant and has been by Wu Jiaoyi's side since she was young. All these years, she has worked hard for Wu Jiaoyi. Her ladyship has always been loyal and has never complained. Wu Jiaoyi, on the other hand, is cruel and merciless. She would hit my concubine if it was heavy, and scold her if it was light. These days, my concubine's body is covered with scars, big and small. But my imperial concubine was grateful for Wu Jiaoyi's nurturing of her, and had always silently endured, never having the slightest complaint. Until one day, imperial concubine Mai bumped into my imperial concubine in the imperial garden, and had a good impression of my imperial concubine. After sending people to inquire many times, I found out that my imperial concubine was Wu Jiaoyi's servant girl. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Udu literature on WeChat chatting about life and looking for a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 823. So she took the initiative to find Wu Jiaoyi and asked for my concubine. She even gave Wu Jiaoyi a lot of benefits. Who would have thought that Wu Jiaoyi treated imperial concubine Mai and my concubine with completely different attitudes? After imperial concubine Mai left, Wu Jiaoyi hung my concubine up and wrapped her in a quilt and beat her until she was on the verge of death. Not only that, Wu Jiaoyi also lied to imperial concubine Mai that my concubine was seriously ill and could only be sent to her after she recovered. Just like that, it dragged on for more than 2 months. In these 2 months, I don't know how Wu Jiaoyi tortured my concubine. Finally, she came to imperial concubine Mai's side. Because my concubine really liked imperial concubine Mai, she was promoted to imperial concubine Mai. But I didn't think. The little maid cried and covered her mouth. This servant thought, the imperial concubine has the my concubine's care, in this harem, who does not know the identity of the my concubine, other than the imperial concubine, no one would dare to disrespect the my concubine. But this servant didn't think that even with imperial concubine Mai's care, Wu Jiaoyi still didn't put my concubine in her eyes. She still beat and scolded her, treating her like an animal. Imperial concubine Mai is kind and has been enduring silently until now. Eunuch Liu, my concubine is really pitiful. She has never made any big mistakes, but Wu Jiaoyi treats her like this again and again. Eunuch Liu, I beg you to tell His Majesty to save my concubine. If His Majesty still doesn't say anything, my concubine really won't be able to live. From the beginning to the end, the woman in white kept her head down and didn't say a word. Even when the servant girl cried for help, she didn't seem to hear it. Eunuch Liu was, after all, an experienced and knowledgeable person. He had seen many women in the inner palace and their methods. Now, he was moved by the servant girl's words. He looked at the woman in white who was covered in blood. Even her face was beaten beyond recognition. He couldn't see her face clearly. Only the indifferent aura around her made people feel that she wasn't that annoying. The maidservant's words and plea for help, why would he need to pass on the message? It was likely that the emperor had already heard it clearly. If the emperor wanted to help, he would have already come over. Moreover, he wouldn't have remained silent until now. For a moment, Eunuch Liu was in a difficult position. Previously, he had said those words to Grand Preceptor Pang. The reason why he had been able to stay by the emperor's side for so many years and his status had always been respected was because he knew how to act according to the situation. He knew what he should do and what he should not do. For example, he had compassion for the person in front of him, but he didn't know if the emperor also had compassion. Even if the emperor had one, but the emperor still had Miss Shun by his side. He could also see that this Miss Shun seemed to be a little narrow-minded. You don't like other women by the emperor's side. And the emperor was also very indulgent and flattering her. Therefore, for a moment, Eunuch Liu felt that this was the first time in his life that he had felt so troubled. He really didn't know whether to say it or not. She saw that the man was still sitting there indifferently. Shun Yueji poked the back of his hand. Did you hear that? She has taken the initiative to ask you for help. After all, you are her man. No matter what, you have to make a stand, right? Make a stand? The man looked at her in amusement. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, follow Udu literature. Chapter 824. Shun Yueji choked. This kind of thing happened to Pang Yuan quite a few times. In terms of methods, Pang Yuan's methods were unparalleled in the harem. Just her cruelty alone was not something others could compare to. He had never cared about Pang Yuan's affairs, let alone theirs. Seeing that the man really had no intention to care, she smiled and said, "Since you don't want to care, we have nothing to do anyway. Let's see who is more scheming."
Oh,
The man looked at her and slightly raised his eyebrows. Are you interested in this matter? Compared to enjoying the scenery, this matter is really more interesting, isn't it? The man gently stroked the hair behind her ear and smiled. Yes. As long as you are happy. Then, between the two, do you think the violent woman is more wrong, or the woman who has accepted her fate and never said a word is more scheming? What do you think, Jia? I'm asking you. Jia should also know that I have never cared about other women. If you don't pay attention, just follow your feelings. Let's make a bet. How about it? What's the bet? Shin Yueji proudly raised her eyebrows. The bet is that if you lose, you are not allowed to touch me for a month. She was serious about this bet. She found that this man was really too much for her when it came to sex, so she needed to rest for more than a month. Otherwise, after seeing that the man heard her bet, his face, which was still gentle, changed in an instant and became very heavy. He dangerously narrowed his eyes. Jia, you should know that I will not agree to such a bet. To him, winning or losing was just to make her happy, not to make such a big bet like her. He had been obsessed with her taste for the first time and could not leave. If he was not allowed to touch her for a month, no doubt it did not seem to kill him. This girl. Mo Wushang really wanted to laugh and be angry at the same time. His dark eyes moved away from the woman and fell on another place. He stared at the calm lake for a while and then looked at her again. I won't bet with you. His reply was very righteous, and his refusal was also very decisive, leaving no leeway. Shin Yueji. The young girl stood up and walked away. What kind of emperor are you? You don't even dare to bet with me. I despise you from the bottom of my heart. Mo Wushang got up and quickly caught up with her. He very naturally put his arm around her waist. I'd rather be looked down upon by Jia than not being able to go to Jia's bed for a month. Hearing this, Shin Yueji's pretty face couldn't help but turn red. You're not serious, there are so many people here. Double happiness. Miss. Go and tell Eunuch Liu that His Majesty won't care about this matter. Also, tell Wu Jiaoyi that when you cut the grass, you need to eliminate the roots. Since you don't like her and feel that she's scheming, you might as well just kill her. If you keep going back and forth like this, those who don't know will probably pin the blame on her. Isn't it not worth it? Yes, miss, this servant will go and tell them now. Shin Yueji glanced at the man behind her. Mo Wushang, you won't be angry that I casually dealt with your woman, right? It was clearly just a questioning tone, but Mo Wushang inexplicably heard a threat from the woman's tone. He couldn't help but laugh and touched her hair that was bristling. Why would I? To chat about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, WeChat followed Yudu literature. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 825. Shuangxi ran over and whispered something into Eunuch Liu's ear. Wu Jiaoyi's face turned pale. She was afraid that the emperor would punish her if he found out that she was so vicious. Death was a small matter, but if her family was implicated because of this, the emperor would treat this scheming bitch differently. Thinking of this, she was furious, but she didn't dare to show it. Even the threatening gestures she showed just now were much more restrained. She stood there obediently, but her body was shivering. On the other hand, the woman who was kneeling on the ground and didn't say anything from the beginning to the end had a sharp glint in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. On the contrary, the corner of her mouth curled up proudly. But before her complacency could last for long, she saw Eunuch Liu's eyes flash with understanding after hearing Shuangxi's words. He said to Wu Jiaoyi, Lady Jiaoyi, Miss Shen and His Majesty are admiring the flowers in the imperial garden. If you want to punish this lowly servant, then go somewhere else. Don't disturb Miss Shen here. You should know that Miss Shen is favored now. No matter who you offend, you can't offend the emperor's favorite, right? Wu Jiaoyi understood Eunuch Liu's words and quickly nodded in agreement. He was surprised. He probably didn't expect that the woman from the Feng nation would also be here. She had just come to the northern underworld kingdom, but she swaggered into the imperial garden with the emperor. From this, it could be seen how much the emperor cared about her and how much he doted on her. In the imperial harem, Which woman would be able to get the emperor to put aside his official duties and play with her? Even Pang Yuan, who had a high status in the Pang family, and imperial concubine Pang had been in the palace for so many years, the emperor had never gone out with her. Thinking that she might not have offended the emperor, but Shen Yueji, Wu Jiaoyi had an indescribable feeling in her heart, but she was more afraid. Most of the women in this world would behave themselves in front of the emperor, and this woman from Feng country was no exception. She was afraid that she would tell the emperor that Wu Jiaoyi's methods were cruel and vicious. How could she treat a weak woman so cruelly? This would make the emperor hate her even more. The more Wu Jiaoyi thought about it, the more afraid she felt. Cease nodded in agreement. Seeing her like this, Shuangxi smiled. Wu Jiaoyi, my miss asked me to pass a message to you. Wu Jiaoyi raised her head to look at her. Although the woman in front of her was dressed like a palace maid, her clothes were different from the clothes of the servants of the North Dark. She was just a maid, but when she spoke to her, her tone was neither servile nor overbearing. There was no arrogance of a superior, and there was no contempt or timidity. For some reason, Wu Jiaoyi felt closer to her. Miss, please speak. Young Miss said that weeds must be removed by the roots. Since Wu Jiaoyi doesn't like the person in front of her, why didn't she just kill him? Wouldn't that make things easier? Ignoring everyone's shocked expressions, Shuangxi smiled faintly and continued, instead of letting the other live and putting on a weak and pitiable appearance, Wu Jiaoyi will vividly display the image of a wicked person every time. I'm afraid that no matter if it's the bystanders or the spectators, at first glance, they will think that Wu Jiaoyi is too domineering, too vicious, too narrow-minded, unable to tolerate a pitiful person. Who would think about your past with others, Wu Jiaoyi? Speaking up to this point, Shuangxi saw tears in Wu Jiaoyi's uneasy eyes. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 826. She stopped talking. Miss means that instead of torturing her and being criticized by others, it's better to just kill her and end it all. It's not strange for a woman to die in the harem. How dare you? It was the palace maid who spoke first. Her tone was sharp and her eyes were ferocious. You are just a lowly servant from Feng country. What right do you have to interfere with the North Sea's matters? My lady is the person that concubine Mai values the most. How dare you, lowly servant, instigate Wu Jiaoyi to kill my lady? Shuangxi didn't care about her arrogance at all. Who does concubine Mai think she is? In Feng country, my miss doesn't even care about the empress. Coming to the North Sea, she is naturally a royal concubine, not to mention a mere concubine Mai. Wu Jiaoyi, my miss has delivered the message. What you want to do and what you should do, it's all up to you. In short, Miss said to remove the roots when cutting the grass. It's not just words. If you are afraid of the concubine Mai behind this woman, you can push this responsibility to my miss this. Wu Jiaoyi looked at her awkwardly. She and Shen Yueji didn't know each other, but she still took the initiative to help her. Everyone in the palace knew that she bullied this bitch every day. It had become a common occurrence. In other people's eyes, she was gentle and kind, but she was the opposite, vicious and sinister. Everyone didn't like her. She didn't think that Shen Yueji would take the initiative to help her and even say these words. These words clearly showed that she trusted her. Her eyes turned red. This was the first time she felt that she was trusted and protected by someone. Even the woman in white who was kneeling on the ground paled. That woman's words were obviously biased. Without a doubt, it was a talisman on Wu Jiaoyi's heart that pushed her to her death. Before, Wu Jiaoyi didn't want to kill her because she was attached to concubine Mai. She didn't dare to be too ruthless. If concubine Mai investigated, she wouldn't be able to escape the responsibility. But she didn't think that this Shen Yueji, in front of the emperor, not only did she not protect her, she even took the initiative to help Wu Jiaoyi and instigated her to kill her. Wasn't she afraid that the emperor would think that she and Wu Jiaoyi were one and the same? She had long received the news from Xingyang Palace that the emperor would pass by this place. She also knew that she would meet Wu Jiaoyi here because she was the one who had ordered her men to control everything behind the scenes. The servants in the harem were just servants who were bribed with money. Wu Jiaoyi was beating and scolding her, but she knew that the emperor would see and hear it. By then, even if the emperor didn't like her, he would still respect her because she was his woman. Seeing her being beaten and scolded like this, she would not beg for mercy. In the emperor's eyes, she would be more valued, but was it because she had schemed and thought that she was too smart, or, in the emperor's eyes, no matter how hard she tried, she was the same as those women? Wu Jiaoyi kneeled down emotionally. "Thank you, Miss Shen." Eunuch Liu squinted his eyes and looked at the kneeling woman calmly. It was obvious that she wasn't as calm as before. Sure enough, as he looked at her, the woman in white finally raised her head and pretended to be calm. "I have no grudge with Miss Shen. Why did Miss Shen instigate Wu Jiaoyi to kill me?" You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.